Hello and welcome to another Caseware webinar. Today's webinar is an introduction to Caseware Cloud Audit. My name is James. I'll be the organizer for today, and I'm joined by the talented Tony. I'm an education and media technician, and Tony is an education and media consultant. If we jump to the next screen there, if you do have any questions, do feel free to submit them using the Q&A button found at the bottom of the screen, showing that GIF there. All questions will be answered at the end of today's webinar in the Q&A section. If there are any relevant questions that I can jump in and ask Tony during the webinar, then I will do. But we have, we've got quite a few people on the webinar today, so I'm expecting a few questions through, which would be good. If we jump to the next slide there. Perfect. I'll just hand over to Tony to run through the agenda for today.
Thanks there, James. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. And thank you for joining us today to go through the webinar. As James said, the recording will be made available on our knowledge base and help site, and our YouTube channel for you to catch up or share with any colleagues. These are the main areas we're going to be covering. Here's an introduction to the Cloud Audit template. So there's only so much we can get in within 45 minutes. So what I'll be doing is I'll be signposting other areas where you can get further guidance on some of the topics that you probably need to dive into a little bit deeper. If there are any questions, please feel free to jump in. It's your time, and I'll do my best to make sure we do cover those within that 45 minutes. And if we do run over by a couple of minutes because there's lots of questions, then more than happy to do so from my end. Okay, so yeah, that's the agenda on the screen. I won't read through it. So hopefully you've all had enough time to soak that in and what we'll be covering. And what I'll do is I'll move on to the areas of the Caseware Cloud that we're going to get some optimization in. So it's not really looking at a workflow for an audit perspective, but it's looking through a workflow from how to get the best out of the software. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. Now, when you're setting up your engagement, there's these key areas really for the system to optimize your file and for you to really get the most out of Caseware and improve the tailoring. Okay, so you start off when you create that engagement, and when you create that engagement, you're going to see a screen very similar to this. Now, I'm not sure if the attendees today have been using Caseware Cloud, or if you're new to it, or it's just your first look. If it is your first look, then setting up files is relatively easy. When you go onto the system, there's only a certain amount of information you need to input. As you're going to see in a moment, we will go onto a live file and set one up as a demonstration. Now, once that file is set up, you need to work through a prelim tailoring. Now, this is the same approach as what we use with our desktop products, okay? It's really useful for trying to reduce some of the weight of the Mercer standard documentation, not to obviously reduce audit work, but just to focus on the areas that are relevant to the audit and relevant to us rather than not assigning not applicable. So the screenshot you can see on your screen it won't just get rid of documentation, but it will also tailor checklists and word programs depending on your responses. It's a real key part of the product, and we need to make sure we spend time on this and getting it set up right. As you'd imagine, wrong answers mean wrong documentation. So we do need to spend time on this, making sure it is spot on. Then we work through our importing data. Then there's multiple ways you can get data into Caseware Cloud. There's linkages with other cloud apps like Xero and so on, or you can just use the traditional, reliable, good old Excel import to get that TB data in. There's other tools as well. If you're a Caseware Desktop user, then there's a tool called CloudBridge. I'm not going to be covering that very much in this webinar at all because of time constraints. However, if that's something that's going to be of interest to you, we will put a link to the CloudBridge material that's held on our help site, so you can follow up and get a bit more, gain some efficiencies from transferring data from your desktop into the cloud. It's brilliant if you're just using audit, transfer the data from a desktop audit to a cloud audit, off you go. It also works really well if you're using the accounts products, so you can update and refresh that trial balance data. If you're not a desktop Caseware user, then that's okay too. There's options for you to gain efficiencies with MapTBs. So if you're using other products like Iris, CCH, and so on, there's a mapping import tool which you can use. There's a bit of setup involved, as you'd imagine, telling Caseware what all the codes mean and where they need to go. But once that's done, you can rely upon that for as many jobs as you need to again, gain efficiencies. Now, the next stage in optimizing your file is once you get a trial balance data and set those benchmarks, get the materiality in, and that's going to really help us go through and drive the work programs and checklists that we're going to need to include. It's very straightforward, and as you'd imagine, it's your basis materiality for you to go through and enter in your balances, and then performance materiality as well. And obviously, as you went down that form, as you'll see a little bit later, there's areas for specific levels of materiality and triviality and such as we go through. Now, the important side of this is that once we set our trial balance data, once we get that materiality, Caseware can do a common sense check of the work programs and say, well, okay, these areas are clearly under materiality and are not material based upon your materiality assessment, unless there's specific levels of materiality for those areas like share capital or wages and salaries, whatever it may be. Okay, so from materiality, you will go on to the B40, and the B40 is going to be a really key document for you doing those final tailorings to the pack and making sure we've got the right work program sections set up and ready for you to start planning those work programs, building the procedures that are relevant to the audit and so on. Okay, so what I'm going to do is let's go into a file and actually see this for live and how it all works. So you should hopefully now all see my Caseware Cloud up. Perfect, thanks, James. You also want to look the same as this. This is a training server. If anyone does want to have a look through the training server and have a bit of an access play around, let me know. Send me an email and we can give you some access to some of the areas on here so you can get your hands on some of the templates. This side here will allow me to log in. There's other options for logging in. You can set up single sign-on, two-factor authentication. When you go into Caseware Cloud, there's lots in there. If you're new to Caseware Cloud, there's several webinars on it, and there's a lovely getting started guide on the cloud, which will talk to you about navigation and setup and what we need to do with security. Security should be your main focus if you're using the audit templates, because some of the controls in place for amending documentation will give more flexibility upon those security settings. Okay, so if you are new to the cloud, do have a look at those and ask for some info on that, because it'll be very handy for you. Now, the application list on the left-hand side, you'll see all the apps. These will be being updated. They're changing the naming convention to make it easier for users to find all the apps in the list the way you'd like to. So what you'll see in the future is that all the audit apps will start with audit. All the accounts apps will start with financials, then disclosure checklists, and it'll make it nice and tidy down this list here. Currently, the template I'm going to use is the UK Company Audit Mercia template, okay, which is the core one for most users of the system. So I'm going to select that, and that will take me into this screen. Now, you probably see, well, you'll see my face from the Zoom meeting, but you'll also see my picture up in the top right-hand corner. Not specific to audit, but it's very useful within an audit file for you to see your colleagues and who are working in there. To give visibility on who's cleared issues and so on. It's quite handy. So if you are a cloud user, do go to my settings up here and add in your photo. Most people have got professional work ones done these days, and they've their LinkedIn profile. So use that, make it nice and easy for you and your colleagues to determine who's raised issues, who's raised comments and so on, rather than just seeing your initials up there. Okay. Now, I've already got a file set up, and we're going to be going into this one a little bit later. That's over here. So I'm just going to drag that to the other side so I don't get confused about what file I'm going to. I'm just going to go through and set this one up. Now, naming convention wise, this is up to you and your firm, and again, your preference here. I would say the bare minimum you need to do really is put an identifier in there for the year ends. We don't really need to put an identifier in for the company that you're preparing the audit for. Sorry, just whacking the mic there. And the reason being is because, well, we can see up here it's got ABC Motor Company there, isn't the reason why that was automatically populated is because I've got this field selected up here. You can always modify it and change it to wherever you want, but that's exactly the entity I want to use today. So I'm going to move on through. Carry forward data, well, that's going to be for your roll forwards once you've locked down your audit engagement. This is a really handy feature here. This was built in last December. And what this will allow you to do is create a file based upon another file effectively. So for Academy users, potentially, maybe we've got a couple of you on the call. Well, if you're preparing Academy audits, well, there's a lot of consistencies from one audit to another. And what you could do at the start of the Academy season is you could create a file. You could put all those areas that you know are consistent in there from procedures and work we're going to do. And then you can use that as a template to create the next 20, 30 files. and save your time on that setup. Okay, all those files will roll forward to next year, and then obviously you're in a good spot again, and off you go. This is going to be a useful feature. So if you are using it, the system, do have a little look at this. There's guidance for you to get access to on our help site. Start date, end dates. I'm not too fussed with this one for today, and the reason being is because it's about project management. It's about managing that audit. We expect to start the audit on a Monday. We expect to finish it on the last Friday of the next month. Whatever it may be, you put the dates in there, and then Caseware can track those movements for you. So it could be a really useful option for the firm. Caseware building lovely new cloud tracker apps, so have a look at those. The rest of it, I'm going to leave it as it is, but I'm going to set myself up as the preparer. And I'll, if I can type my name in, there we go. And I'll set James, my colleague, up as the reviewer. So there he is. Description wise, I'm not too fussed. It's an audio file, so I was going to press save and create the file. All right, so the first thing we said we're going to have a look at is the trial balance. Okay, you can get that trial balance data in. Before we do, if you are new to Caseware Cloud, it's probably best to give you a bit of a run through on the areas here on the screen that we can see that are available to us. First of all, top left-hand corner, I said this was the December 23 year end. Well, it says 2020 here, doesn't it? So I need to update that. So left click here, and then just go to the year end field and update this. It's a slightly different calendar option to just the ones we can type into. It took me a couple of weeks to get used to it, but now it's just as quick as typing it in, to be honest. Changing the name if you need to update it. There's options there. There's workflow stages for you to update as you progress through the audit, so everyone knows where you're at, whether we're out on field work or whether the plan is complete or whether it's not complete and we're out at the field work. There's no lockdown between planning and field work. So, for example, if you've done enough planning, you've not quite completed it yet, there's some agreements that you still need to put in the permanent file and stuff like that. Well, there's no lockdown stopping you to do the field work. Okay, the system's quite flexible in that approach because we understand that it's not so cut and dry that we can always complete the planning before we go out to clients. Most of the audits I used to carry out when I was back in practice were always completed when we're out to clients. And things like trial balance setup, it was normally completed when I got to the clients. Now, that's a few years ago though, so it may not always be the same case. Consolidation option, very similar to our desktop users. Again, there's guidance on the help site for anyone who wants to look at doing group audits. The materiality documents lend themselves really well to setting out the component auditors' materiality and so on that. And there's also some really interesting tools coming in regards to component auditors towards the end of the year, where we can actually manage the work of the component auditors and release certain areas of checklists and documentation to that component auditor, so they get full access to it, but without getting full access to the audit file itself. So keep an eye out for that. That'll probably be around the last quarter of this year, so maybe for September, but definitely by the end of the year that we'll see that new feature available for component auditors. So that's enough for me to talk about on the screen, apart from I did put the wrong year end that I've just noticed there. So I'm going to change that back to what it should be, which is 31st December 2023. Just about spotted it. All right. So when you're in the file then, you've got options to change details up here. You've got the three dot button here, which I'd invite you all to have a look at on the system. This one's going to be really powerful. Okay, modified since last review. The system will say, if I prepare a document, okay, James is going to review it. James looks at that file and he modifies something. Well, if I've signed that document off, then I should get a notification to say that James has modified it and show me what he's modified. So hopefully James can log into this file to demonstrate that in a moment for us, so we can see that turn on. But this is going to be really useful for you. Hidden items, you shouldn't be diving into this too often, but if you do turn it on, you'll see all the other parts of the Mercier standard pack, and we can see the visibility settings for them. These eyeballs will let me know that, okay, there's an eyeball, it's got a strike through, it's not showing. And the reason why it's not showing is, okay, if I go to groups here, so sorry, that one here, and click on that eyeball, it'll give me the conditioning why it's not showing. Okay, the prelim tailoring document needs you to say that these two questions should be a yes. Currently, you haven't answered them, okay? Which we know we haven't answered anything because I haven't done anything in the file yet. So I'm going to turn that hidden items off and we'll go straight into the prelim tailoring. And the prelim tailoring, nice and easy. Standard set of questions. There's guidance from updates from ISA 315. really useful if you're new to the Mercia approach. So do have a look at that. It's not fully exhaustive, but there's quite a list of changes that were adopted since that update, which is, again, good reading. And then as we go through, I can just say, okay, it's a new client, it's using full approach, and answer the questions that I think are appropriate. See, you'll take a little bit more time on these than what I'm going to do today. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to sign this off, and up here at the top. Now, before I do sign off, actually, just this little document manager shortcut on the right-hand side, this to me is really useful. Okay, this is a direct representation of all the documents that you're going to see on your documents manager. So I'm just going to go back to my documents manager quickly so you can see it over here. Also, that does tell you can open up as many tabs as you need to when you're setting these files up. You see over here, like, okay, so we've got the same list on the right-hand side as we do on the left. If I go back into this document, the prelim tailoring, and I say, okay, well, group membership is a yes, you'll see the group document just popped up over here. If I go, actually, no, it's not, then the group document will disappear. So it reacts very quickly to responses. Unlike many desktop products where you have to save it, you have to load it, and then it changes, it's pretty instantaneous in the cloud due to the technology that they're using to prepare the audit packs, which is, yeah, hopefully a lot of benefits in there for everyone. So I'm going to go through and sign this off now. Hopefully everyone can see that James has popped into the file. If you can't see that James has popped into the file, if you look at the top right-hand side of the screen, just up here, you'll see James's picture has just loaded in. So I'm going to give this an awful level of self-review, okay? But at this stage here, what James can do, I'm going to ask James, could you change the service organization question from a no to a yes? And by the way, that green bar underneath James's picture tells me that he's in the same document as me. Okay. So thank you, James. Now, see on this bit here, James has changed that response. We could see that change on the screen, but there's nothing noticeable here, is there? Okay. Now, if I go back to my documents manager, I'm just going to refresh this and keep that screen open. Here we go. What you'll see over here is that I get a warning triangle. Now, that warning triangle is also showing up here. The difference really being is that that warning triangle would not show unless I selected modify since last review. Okay, so it's really important for any reviewers coming to the file, really, and we're all reviewers of our own work or other people's work, is to have this option turn on. It will remember this. So if I turn it on now and I log in tomorrow morning on this file, that setting will still be on. If I go to a different file, it won't automatically be on there until I do turn it on. Okay, but do turn it on, because that then gives me a nice clear call to action to say there's some changes. It will say, okay, there was some changes here. I can clear the notification if I wanted to. Maybe if James wrote an issue and told me what he changed, I potentially would just clear it then if I agreed with it. So James, if you wouldn't mind shotting a little issue in it, thank you very much. So again, just refresh the screen and hopefully there we go. So we can see an issue in there to say, okay, I believe this needs to be changed to yes. So fantastic. So James has let me know what is changed. Now I can't see directly from here, but if I go into the document and click on prelim tailoring, the review tools turn on. I can scroll down. I can see the question that James has changed, and I can see the comment on the right side that James is, okay, that's outstanding. Now, at this stage, I can say, well, actually, fantastic. Well, that's resolved and I can clear it. But I'm gonna come back to issues and use this as an example later. Okay, so I'm not going to clear it just yet. Actually, I might mark it as resolved so you can see the change in the flag. When you mark it as resolved, the flag stays up. And then I can say, well, okay, I'm happy with that. And effectively what happens then is that I can clear this notification. Now, this is really important. I mentioned the security setup earlier. The only people that should be able to clear these notifications will be the last person who reviewed the document, so me in this case, or any other admins. I keep hitting the mic, so sorry about that. Or any other admins in your firm. Okay, so if it's just an audit senior, they would not be able to clear this notification. They'll be able to change the responses and they'll be able to tell you why, but they won't be able to give it that stamp to say that, okay, we've approved it. So effectively what this does is it gives the document a new timestamp to say that I've reapproved it at this date, and I can confirm there, and that notification's gone, okay? So a little bit there of the review tools. There's more in the review tools, as you can see there, and different documents will have different features depending on what you're looking at. So checklists will have modified responses and bits and pieces like that on there, which will be really useful as well. So tailoring done. the next step for you really to do is get your data in. Okay, so there's lots of ways to get your data into the file. If I go up to date here, you can see there's various options. Excel and CSV generally is going to be the easiest one. So if I can just go next here, and then I can browse through to a file. So I will just drag that over there and grab a file from my desktop that I saved earlier. So bear with me a second. And there we go. So just loading that in. So once you set these up, so it works very similar to our desktop products. We import the data, then we define what the columns are by using the headers. So account number, account name, map code. We can't import map codes, but as I said, if you're moving from Caseware Desktop, there's a CloudBridge tool which will convert that all for you and make your life nice and easy on setting up files at least. So as we work through here, then you just define the columns, check the data to make sure the data is actually the right data and we're not missing anything. And obviously you can manually remove these ticks if you want to. And then once you're happy with the data.
We've had a question through, Tony. So just where you see the little exclamation mark, what does that mean? So there's the grey exclamation mark on a couple of the rows there.
Let me unmute myself. So this one down here, so duplicate account number, only one may be selected. So if you scroll up through here and you look through, so these sections here, there's the reason why this is here and that is here. Can you see that what Caseware is seeing is that this is the account number column and it sees it as blank. And because there's balances, and I know this looks a bit odd, but that's the total of the document, the column, and what comes through from the Excel file, unfortunately, which is why it looks a bit crazy. But because there's balances on this row, and because there's a balance here, now it looks like CY, PY1, PY2, but Caseware is picking up on the 1 and the 2, and it's picking up on these characters down the bottom, and it's saying there's a number in there, and it's saying that this blank account number is the same as this blank account number. So in this case, it's not a problem whatsoever because we don't want to import this row, and you can see it's not ticked. So if it was ticked, then that could be an issue, but it's not. If you saw this marker here along one of the actual nominal account rows, then yeah, that's going to be a problem because Caseware can only have one nominal account. So what will happen? The import will go to the first nominal account, say B015, and it would import that 15,000. And let's pretend this B021 is also B015, or what it was going to do then is going to go through to this row and it's going to import this 153,000. But it's not going to net it off against that credit for 15,000. It's going to overwrite it. So when you do see this little warning down the bottom, do keep an eye out for it. Just scan up the table, make sure that, okay, there's no duplicates, or if it's just the same as this example, 2 0 rows that we're not importing, then move on. Okay, but yeah, good question. Thank you for.
We've also just had another one as well. We've just a question regarding the search bar at the top. What is that going to search against? Is it column specific or?
Again, I'll mute myself. All you'll do on this side, you'll search for any of the data within the table. So if I go through here and then A01, so any information within the table under here you can search for. I'm not sure exactly when we are going to be using it. What would be nice is if that warning message did pop up to say, okay, account number B012 is being used twice, at least that way we can then go for, okay, B012 and narrow that search down for duplicate accounts quite quickly. But yeah, it will just search any of the information from the import field as you go through. But excellent. Thank you very much for those questions. All right, let's clear that search now. And then once you're down the bottom, but actually, 2 seconds. Did I exclude something just before I do go? There we go. Always double check. And then click on import. Fantastic. All right. So when you're in here, then you've now got your TB in. But remember, Caseware has no idea what these account codes are. So we need to tell Caseware what they are. And that's when we come to this assign account section. Now, I'm going to go back to the point earlier that we're quite time pressured today. So I don't want you to see me have to map all of this. So what we're going to do is we're going to work on some of the P&L items just to show you how it works. Okay. So staff salaries, you click on staff salaries, that moves the account from the total listing into the selected accounts field. And it'll give you some auto suggestions. Fantastic. I can go, okay, well, that one's relating to wages and salaries, and off it goes. Travel. And then say, okay, hotels and travel. So you can see this side here for the P&L items, it's really quite quick and easy to go through and get these maps. It really wouldn't take us a lot of time just to map our P&L items. Now, the balance sheet items are a little bit trickier in that. and I'll explain why. If I go to plant machinery, well, there's lots of plant machinery codes, and in most cases, the column width here isn't quite what we need, is it? As we can all see. And the reason being is because if we go to tangible fixed assets and then plant machinery here, there's just a lot of codes. And effectively, because that's got plant machinery in it, it pulls up a lot of suggestions. So when you're looking at PPE ones, it's just probably easier to drag it over and do it that way. Depreciation, okay, go down to the depreciation field and drop it in there. But yeah, the mapping side is quite fluid, quite easy to do. Now, there are other options. You've got, as I mentioned, you've got Cloud Bridge, which is a nice, easy tool. If I just bring over my Caseware working papers file here, I go to documents. I'm not going to go through the full ins and outs and how you set this up, but effectively you can link it to entities. You can go through and tell it to populate certain files, and then it's just going to go through and send the TB data from your desktop up into the cloud, which is fantastic. Other options you've got would be the import mapping tool that I mentioned earlier. So everyone's got access to this, okay? So the trial balance mapping import tool. As mentioned previously, there's a little bit of a setup on it. So what you can do once you've got a file set up with the chart of accounts you want to use, and potentially maybe your Iris account codes, you can then go through and select that entity here. Once you select the entity there, there'll be a mapping file for you to select. So I can't remember what I set this one up as the other day. Hopefully we've still got it available so we can show you. If not, I'll get one sorted by the end of the session. I'll come back to this and show you in the session. But it's very easy. You select an entity from the list, you select the mapping file, and all the groupings and mappings loads in instantaneously. So two good routes, whether you're a desktop user there or if you're if you're using a product other than Caseware. Now, as I said, I don't want you to have to see me sitting here mapping all these. So I have already got a file that has been mapped. So I'm going to drag that one back over to save a bit of time in true Blue Peter style. So data here then, I've got my trial balance in there. It's already mapped. A few interesting and useful areas for you in here will be these account screens and financial groups. Okay, so I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on here, but for things like analytical review, fantastic. I can go to financial groups. It will give me the financial statement areas. Okay, fantastic. Again, I can see that there's 2.2 million in there. I can then go through and I can build variance columns in if I wanted to. So I can then go through and see, okay, what that change was from current year to prior year. I can build in annotations and notes on variances by using that plus icon over here. So I can build in a variance and build in my notes to back that up and then save that, and it'll build the annotation to the right-hand side. Now, before you start using this for analytical review, though, is you're best to set your materiality document up. And the reason being is because we're going to get some indicators here about what the material balances are and what not material balances aren't, which obviously will help us focus on the areas that are relevant for us to be doing that level of work. So using this field over here, we know the Mercian schedule is the B25 for materiality. So I'm just going to use the search bar. If you want to use the pin, by the way, you can use the pin there, and then that materiality document will be at the top of the list. What you will see is there's also a recent file list underneath it as well, which will just be obviously the recent files that you've accessed, which is again very handy for you getting back and forth through the file. So if you are using Caseware Clouds, try and adopt this earlier rather than later, because this does save time. Guidance wise on materiality, again, you'll be very familiar with this. I'm sure it's the standards, again, the guidance from the ISAs, again, suggesting benchmarks. I'm going to close those down. Principal users, again, a field for you to go through and build in information. Every time you put, so bankers or shareholders, whatever it may be in there, the fields will expand and give you more areas to populate, okay? And then you've got obviously the rows there to build as many as you like. Underneath that, this is on materiality basis. This is a key point of us really getting that trial balance data in, because now, okay, we've got the turnover populated and we can say, okay, well, that's the 1% there. We're going to use the 1% of. And then again, you can transfer that over. So, well, okay, we're going to have possible materiality basis then of 115,000. Underneath that, you can put your justification for why we're selecting turnover and why we're selecting that benchmark of 1%. And then we can move on to our performance materiality section, build in our rate that, again, is appropriate, building in our justification, and then from that point as well, building in our clearly trivial elements to be included. Underneath that, there's areas that require specific levels of materiality, so where we can put things like share capital in, or any areas that maybe in complex in nature or whatever it may be, to make sure that we're considering those areas when we are looking at our assessment. Okay, so materiality in them. So I was going to go back to data. By the way, at the top here, can you all see the materiality figures are showing at the top? Just a quick demonstration. If you want to get back to the B25, you can just click on one of the figures here, and it's always going to take you back to that materiality schedule. Okay. But now what I can do in here is I can go to indicators and I can show the material balances. And it's just going to make it a little bit easier for me to obviously focus on the right areas. I'm not saying that you're absolutely going to follow those markers to the T, but at least that way it's going to give you some visual aids to help you as and when you're setting those up. Okay. So other areas in there, you've got accounts. I quite like the account side. The main difference for me here is that this shows you the financial statement area balances. This shows you just your nominal account balances, but it's got a lovely filter on there as well. So if I wanted to look at transactions between 2,000 and 3,000, I can go through and search anything that might be there. Okay, we've only got one nominal account with a balance between 2K and 3K. So I quite like that, that little feature within the account side. Okay. All right. So we've got the trial balancing. We've set up the prelim tailoring. We've got our materiality in. So one of the key areas then for you on this next stage of file setup is the B40. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my documents manager, just looking at the time. We're just about on track. I'm just going to go down to my B40, and there we are. So audit programs required. If you're a current Caseware Desktop user, this would be the B30-FSA document or an element of it. Okay, when I'm in this schedule, especially when I'm starting to learn the products, the design purpose on this was to provide users lots of white space to make sure it's nice and clear. But at the same time, when you're first using it, it kind of rolls in to one at the start. And I know we've got the headers there and so on, and these are obviously crucial. But what I'd say for you all to do when you first start using it is just turn on the document map. It makes it nice and easy to navigate to all the key areas and jump around without you getting lost, but at the same time giving you that opportunity to build familiarity with the products and where everything's laid out, which is the biggest part of learning, really, isn't it? That familiarity of new systems and where to go, and what the control is and so on. So I'm going to focus on, say, wages and salaries on this side. Now, wages and salaries here, we can see, okay, there's material balances. So Caseware's automatically selected as yes. Now, if I look at intangible or fixed assets, then, well, actually, Caseware's not automatically selected it. Now, it doesn't give me a balance, but we know that we can go to data. And then from data, I showed you earlier, you've got this lovely area down here for financial groups. And at that point here, we can see, okay, well, there just aren't any intangibles. By the way, just as a side note, really, this is a good sense check, really, for you to make sure you've mapped it in the right places. If you start seeing goodwill here, then we know we've got something wrong with the mapping. So it'd be a nice indicator there. So back to the point, no, we haven't got any intangible fixed assets. Perfect. So go back here. So you scroll down, tangible fixed assets. Okay, yep, that's above materiality. Investments, well, that's not. Back to the data. Okay, we've got investments there for £50. Well, am I going to do no work there as well below materiality? Am I going to ask some questions about what that £50 balance is? Probably yes. And at that stage, then you can determine whether, okay, there's revaluations that have never occurred, or maybe, yeah, whatever it may be, whether it's Bitcoin from 10 years ago. There may be some work there for us to do. So do use both of these screens when you're making this assessment and when there's no's, but it's just a simple case of no. If I say no here, what you're going to see is the work program won't be visible. If I change that back to a yes, then what you'll see is that work program will pop in on the right-hand side. So yes, we'll keep it. No, it won't show. Okay. Now, focusing back on wages and salaries, once you're in here, your next job really is to look at the assertions, make sure we're looking at the relevant assertions and the key assertions, not just for this financial statement area, but obviously for your client as well. Underneath that, you're going to start looking at audit approach. And this never has to be war and peace. Okay, what this should be is, okay, we're going to be using analytical procedures and these types of test of detail, looking at these areas, and that's going to be our overall focus. And then from that focus that you've just put within that field, You then go through and select the relevant areas here that we're going to set. So I said analytical procedures and test of detail. So tick these here. Now, the important bit for these, which you may see over here, we go, like that's just the assertions, is that these will populate areas within our work programs. Now, that is definitely an area that we want to have a look at today. So I'm going to mark them as, yep, we're going to have those activated. Now, that'd be your job through all the rest of the sections, is to review the sections, review the assertions, put your approach in and what the general approach is going to be on the word programs, and obviously move on. So just going to take us back to the slides quickly. So hopefully they should be loading up in a second for you. So they should be up for you now. So creating a file, we've looked at those, we've discussed the import methods, creating new nominal accounts. I haven't done yet, so I'm going to go back and show you that before we then. Any information about the mapping tool, Cloud Bridge, put it in the question field, and James and I will make sure we follow up some more guidance for you. Tailoring of the file, hopefully that's nice and clear. There's lots in there. I haven't shown you tailoring in the checklist yet, but I'm going to show you that and again when we go back, because that's what we're looking at next, is looking at the checklists. Okay, so you've got 10 minutes then to have a quick run through on checklists, work program, risks and controls, and work programs, which is nice and ample. Okay, so what I'm going to do then is I'm going to go back into my Caseware file, and that should be loading up back on your screen now. And what we'll do first of all then, I did say that I'll show you how to create new nominal accounts. I would say probably don't really need it, but you've got the nice effect. Let me clear this filter because you can't see any of the normal accounts. There we go. Create new normal accounts is just up here. Add account, add adjustments. Okay, so add account, set what you like up. So when we get the client's trial balance data, we do need to expand across. So a really simple example would be Sage Line 50 accounts. There's one net book value account for your plant machinery or fixtures and fittings. You don't have the brought forward additions and the depreciation, brought forward the depreciation charge, the revalue, any of that's good stuff in there. So you may need to break more detail out. So that'd be one of the reasons why you'd be creating your own codes, wouldn't it? The way the system works now and the way they're set this up is you don't need to do that really. You can go to add adjustment. It takes you to the adjustment screen, which you can access from the adjustments window as well by going to adjustment. And what you've got is you can populate your journals based upon account lines. Fantastic. There's my nominal account. However, if I selected group lines, well, I can then just use Caseware's groupings. And there's a lot of groupings in there, which will take away the need for you to be able to go through and create nominal accounts, because you can just go through and say, okay, well, we want to use what we've got, prepayments, bank account. We could use any of the groupings here from Caseware. It's not showing all of them at the moment. That's because I haven't ticked the include zero balances, and then you can really see the weight of options you've got available to you. This scroll bar will just keep loading up and going down and going down and going down and going down, which is why the select grouping and the search is quite useful, really, isn't it? So that side there, it really narrows it down and makes it a bit speedier. So if you need to create a nominal account, really maybe question if do you need to create it, because, well, you can just post a journal to any of Caseware's groupings and it would save you having to post journals, and then obviously the client's TB is the client's TB, which is like a nice thing to have within your files. Okay, so that's showing the normal accounts. Let's go into a checklist. So I'm going to go back to my documents manager. Let's go to the main planning checklist, the planning check, the B01. The reason I've gone in here really is this is automated as well. Can you see we've got the question number 2, consider the need to update customer due diligence procedures. Well, that side there is triggered by our tailoring. Now, on our review tools here, we can see all the questions that haven't been populated based upon that tailoring. So let me just remove these quickly. And I'm going to just turn this one on. So optimize to exclude. So that's saying, okay, we didn't need the new client checklist. Okay, we didn't need the related parties. And all the other questions here that are flagging up in gray are just because we didn't need them. So for a reviewer coming into this file, it's really handy. You can just go to your review tools and go, okay, Tony set this file up. Let's just make sure we've got what we need in this planning checklist before we move on too far. And you can easily see all the tailoring questions that aren't correct. And if you can see something that you think you should have, then you can go and click on the eyeball and go, oh, we need the group membership. let's go back to the prelim tailoring and add it in. And once you add it in, it will update that response to show the procedure. So it works really well. And there's not too much messing around from your side to get that information. So hopefully you find that easy to navigate around as and when you start using Caseware Cloud Audit. So checklist wise, again, there's other review tools. There's ones with optimal answers. If anyone's wondering what that is, a really good example you'll find on the B11. B11 here, effectively, if I go through and say, has the audit engagement partner active for more than 10 years, that will be a non-optimal answer, okay? And you can see it there flagged up as a non-optimal answer, matches up to the key. And what non-optimal was really trying to say to you is actually, yeah, we can use that response, but you need to do some more work. Go into the B12 and tell us what safeguards you're putting in place because the partner's been acting for 10 years. So second partner reviews and so on. So that side there for you is going to be really useful for you, just making sure, okay, quick sense check. Have we got any non-optimal answers? Yes, we do. Have we done additional work to make sure there's safeguards in place? Yes, we have. Fantastic. Off we go. So using the review tools, they're going to be really handy for you to obviously identify those areas. Turning these off, I'm just going to go back into B01. I'm going to do that for my recent file list at the top. Back we go. And then work through. So sign-offs wise, nice and easy. If you do want to get some more information, there we go. Click on the light bulb. I mean, on this side here, it isn't the most in-depth guidance, is it? See B02 audit strategy. But again, it's taking us in the right direction. You also get the link over here on the right side. If you're happy with that work there, you can mark it as completed with exceptions, or unable to complete. I mean, if you were putting unable to complete, you can see straight away it comes up with this different color code, isn't it? This is blue. And this is kind of saying, well, is that really the right response? So you can build in more details underneath. And once you do build those more details in, you can see it flashed up. It still says like this. So we wouldn't be expecting for anyone to be using unable to complete and sign off. Really what unable complete means is that there's additional work. We need to get more information from the clients, or we need more time on a job tomorrow. My preference would be just to leave it not selected, but there's an option for you to flag those up, because at least that way you can use the review tools and it will flag up all the non-optimal answers, which is, again, a nice review tool to clear to make sure that we have done all we need to do. When you sign it off as well, some checklists will put your signature on it on the right side. Once you mark these off, yeah, completed, and you can just remove your signature as well if you need to. Okay. Unfortunately, removing the response here will not remove your sign off. It will activate your sign off, but you'll need to manually remove it if you want to remove the sign off. Okay. Other than that, really, you've got an editing tool. So the editing tool can be used by anyone to expand any of the areas of the checklists. You're not going to get complaints by expanding areas to give more guidance about specifics. Obviously, you should be removing Mercia guidance and obviously the procedure. That detail should be there, and it should always be there. But you can expand upon areas in particular scenarios, I'm sure, just to make sure it's nice and clear. The good thing here is, again, the review tools jump straight into play and make it really easy for you to see any areas that are modified, and it will highlight those up here to say, okay, well, that was the original text, and then Tony's wrote expand to make that nice and clear. Okay. All right. So that side, I'm just going to jump into our Word programs because I know we're coming up to the end of our time today. So just into documents over here. When I go down to my Word programs, these over here on the left-hand side are progress donuts, okay? So they'll show you what documents are signed off and so on. They're also navigation to areas, so use those to jump around your file. And let's have a look at our wages and salaries. Let me just scroll down to my M section, and there's my Word program here. So when you're in your Word program side, it's the usual guidance from Mercia at the top, so please do familiarize yourself with this. It's very key. Underneath that, you'll have the general mandatory tests that are built in mandatory on every single file. As a matter of fact, we will make sure that our lead schedules cross-cast and so on. Underneath that, though, I've got my analytical procedures and I've got my tested detail. Okay, so there's no procedures there. I think the main thing really I wanted to flag up to you really is that don't go straight to the edit pen. Okay, you can do. And then you can go down to test the detail, and you've got an area here to build in procedures, and I can build in as many as I need to, and I can link assertions to them and so on. But really what we need to do on this side is use the Mercia content library. And you're going to get access to that by going to the three dot button here. and turn on hidden items. Okay, so turn on hidden items, and then you're going to see this document map expanded quite dramatically. As you go down there, then we can see all the standard procedures that Mercia make available and could be appropriate to the audit work that we need to carry out. If this is right, then you go to the eyeball, you click on the eyeball, you say show. The eyeball will then go red to indicate that that's turned on, and then you'll work through the rest of them. Okay, so it's nice and simple to build in the procedures you need. Once you build in the procedures you need, you just turn off your hidden items. Okay, before I do, I'm just going to add in one analytical procedure as well, just to show that up on the screen. Okay, sign off for these is exactly the same as what you just saw on the planning checklist. So you'll put a response into the work done area, and then you'll sign off on the right hand side over here where my mouse is circling. Okay, so nice and straightforward. The only thing I'm running out of time slightly to show you is the risk side, and I'm going to do this very quickly. Okay, so I do appreciate we're at the end of the time now. An important part of the day is coming up, client commitments and probably lunch as well. But risks can be created by this plus button at the top right, very similar to the desktop. Now, we haven't got obviously anywhere near enough time within 45 minutes to go through the approach for the risk assessment. There's a brilliant webinar that the product team put on to show you how the risk schedules are set up. So I will make that available to everyone. And for the time being, to make sure that it's nice and quick for you here, I'll just copy and paste some information over. Okay, so here we go. I didn't really need to copy and paste that one. It's nice and simple. Right, so details wise, just going to copy that details in and payroll. There we go. So just leave it very simple. Financial statement levels or assertion level risks. When you see the webinar from the product team, this will be nice and clear to you about what we need to be selecting, but I'm just going to select wages and salaries. Underneath that, then I'm going to say completeness and accuracy of my assertions. At this stage now, because I've set my work program up, what I can do is I can go to audit response. I can go down to that work program, and then from that work program, went a little bit too far there, didn't I? Select the work program. And then I can then go through and build in the procedures or link it to the procedures. And that's really what I wanted to demonstrate here for you is, okay, I can link this risk to multiple procedures and press save. And once you see here, can you see the little indicator now comes on the right-hand side of those procedures to say, okay, well, we've linked a risk to that procedure, and you can always click on it to see the detail. I've created two on this file for some reason, but never mind. All right, so very apologies for overrunning there. Hopefully you found that introduction. I know it's quite a quick run through. We're definitely not covering everything that you need to see in Cloud Audit. Hopefully it gives you a bit of a taste of what's up there and how it works. James, if I do move on, are there any other questions that have come in at all?
Yeah, we do actually have a couple more questions. One question on updates. So if with updates that are being released, will this automatically be applied to an audit file that's in progress? I'm just got a bit of a worry about that.
Okay. So updates in progress isn't a feature currently available in the cloud applications, which is scheduled for release in end of Q1, Q2 next year. Okay. However, when you roll forward a file, what will happen is, if you go to planning checklist is a good example for that. If there's new procedures from Mercia, effectively, when you roll forward a file, those new procedures will be built into the relevant sections in here. So when you roll forward, all the updates will be applied, which is normally the route most clients want to go down with audit files anyway. Once they've created a file and started working, they don't really like taking updates during the audit work because of risk of losing work and so on. I know there's going to be areas where we've got ISO 315 updates, and if we haven't included those documents at the start of planning, it doesn't matter whether we like updating files or not, we have to include those in. So in those scenarios, which hopefully we don't have as many large updates like that coming our way, I know there are some more updates, but not as extensive. There will be a feature next year for you to update engagements in progress, which would be fantastic. And then for everyone else who's just rolling forward their file to year 2, it will automatically pull in all the updates for you. The update process is very painless. Effectively, it's just about the same amount of time as creating a file. So you saw how long that took earlier, say 30 seconds to a minute, depending on system performance.
Perfect. And just another one here, because I know we're a bit short on time, but when you selected the documents menu at the top, so just jump back into the documents manager, there was a little pop-up in the bottom right. Someone's asking, what is that? It's somewhat new to them. So
this one, this guy down here. Yep, perfect. So that is in-app help. Okay, So you're going to see a lot more of Pendo. It's a system to provide guidance. What it can do is it triggers suggestions on whether you need help or assistance. What it also really importantly do is to tell you about product updates. So over here, we can see an update from probably James from yesterday or the day before, get my dates right. So on this side here, we can see that there's updates to templates, notifications on CloudBridge and bits and pieces. So it's really useful on-point information. We're probably going to be expanding the use of it with more guidance as we see what the statistics come back. But I think it can manage, but if you're getting frustrated and clicking a lot in one area, well, we can pick up on that information, go, okay, maybe we need to improve the product or we need to put some guidance there to help steer along. So yeah, Pendo, it's also got contact details there. So if Pendo doesn't give you all the information you need, get straight onto the phone support line and get one of the tech support team to steer you in the right direction.
Perfect. Wonderful. All right, I think we can jump back to slides there. Fantastic. And we'll just do the end roll call here. Perfect, no problem. Wonderful. Okay, just a quick update. We do have a new knowledge base called my.caseware.com. So jump on there, give it a look. We are expanding it and updating a few of the articles on there. So do feel free to jump on there. It works in a very similar way as the old help site. If we jump to the next slide. Perfect. For any of our upcoming webinars, do just jump on to caseware.com/UK/resources and /events and register as you have done for this one. Wonderful. To be kept in the loop about any future webinars or any other education and media related material, do hop on to our LinkedIn page, Caseware Client Services, and give us a follow, as well as our YouTube channel, Client Services-Caseware UK. We've got a load of playlists on there, including all of the recordings of previous webinars. So this one will be up in a couple of days from this live date. So do go on there and give us a subscribe if you want to. We've got another slide. Fantastic. Just another reminder on the URL for the knowledge base there. But thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you in the next one.
Yes, thank you, everyone.